Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of MC Commute. My name is Zack and I'm going to ride to the office. On today's show we have a larger guest than usual. That is BMW's K1600B Grand America. So that's a top case touring version of the K1600B, which came out a couple years ago, and that's based on the K1600 platform, which came out in 2010 or 11 or something like that. Anyway, it's a large bike. It's made for crossing continents or countries, but I've been commuting on it a lot lately, so I figured I would share some of the cool technology and interesting features of this machine. And that's going to start right now. So giddy up!
Okie dokie artichoke. So yeah, big old touring bike. It does have some interesting thingamajigs. It's got these like gray contrast cut wheels, very American V-twin. Those are a $1,500 option, which I think is kind of surprising. We're probably not going to be able to see the front brakes when we stop at a stoplight like we usually do, so you can check them out right here. I forget how big the rotors are exactly, but the brakes are stupendous, and we'll talk about those. Auxiliary fog lights. I'll try to talk about pricing later, obviously, but it's complicated on BMWs in general, and this bike especially. But that's an option. It's got floorboards and foot pegs. It's kind of an interesting thing. They decided to give you both, which I think is kind of neat. What else? Oh yeah, this little doohickey, which we'll also talk about. I think is kind of a cool feature of the machine. A little air deflector. Luggage. Mechanical latches. USB charging. Auxiliary port. Good luggage in general. I like the mechanical latch. It locks keyless, which is pretty cool. And then your top case. It's got my bag in it. 49 liter top case, I think 37 liter side luggage. Pretty comprehensive. Arguably the best part. Oh, grumble, grumble, grumble. So those are 6 inline cylinders across the front of the bike, and you can see how canted forward the cylinders are. Obviously just to sort of keep the engine low and create a little bit of space up here for all the other goings on. The headlight, I know we talk about headlights now and again. The headlight in the case of the K1600 is one of the coolest headlights, probably the coolest headlight in all of motorcycling. Adaptive xenon. Which means when you lean over, this mirror pivots and it directs the headlight through the corner. It's stupendous. It's unbelievable. Alright, let's roll, shall we? Grand America. That 6-cylinder engine up front there is 1,649 cc's, I believe, hence the K1600. When we dynoed it last was a few years ago, and it made 136 horsepower, which is, I don't know, nothing to sneeze at. The bike does weigh 800 pounds with a full 7 gallons of gas, so, you know, it's no featherweight. In fact, it's quite heavy, but, yeah, 135, 140 horsepower, that's no joke. BMW claimed 160 at the crank. Anyhow, what's important is this. It's got quite a bit of stomp, actually. It compares probably most obviously with the Honda Goldwing engine. I think their Goldwing revs to 6,000 maybe, or maybe 6,500, but I want to say 6,000. And this bike revs to 8,500, which is, yeah, pretty spicy. And you don't even really need to flirt with that 8,500 RPM redline, because it makes sort of an amazing amount of power before then. Arguably the crown jewel of this motorcycle anyway, the engine. And we'll talk about it more later. Now is when we talk about ergonomics, which on the K1600 are quite accommodating, as you would assume. Like in the Goldwing, region of ergonomics, although much different than the Goldwing. Goldwing, you feel like you sit kind of on top of the bike, and the riding position is very, very neutral. This one is more, a little bit more kind of American V-twin. Like you sort of feel like you're sitting down in the bike, and the bars feel kind of low and slung back. In fact, there's this big loop. I'm not looking at it right now because I'm looking at the road, but you can see there's this big funny kind of loop handlebar thing that they did. And the foot pegs feel kind of close to the seat, especially compared to the Goldwing. The discrepancy is small, but it feels like the seat to peg ratio is kind of tight. The seat is about 30.5 inches, 30.7 inches maybe. So approximately Grom height, but a little bit bigger bike than a Grom. Yeah, so overall it's very comfortable. The seat's real plush and the riding position is nice, but it's a little more polarizing than something like the Goldwing. I think the Goldwing is just kind of right in the middle of the road, like really neutral and really well thought out. This one is a little bit more stylized in the way that you sit, especially with your feet forward on the floorboards, which I'll do right now. Now I really feel like I'm riding an American V-twin, except without the vibrations. I should really just jump right into talking about features because there are so many. There's a quick shifter, for example, as I approach the stoplight. Third, second, first. It's pretty cool. Up down quick shifter, so it auto blips when you downshift, which is pretty bitchin', I think. It's just a really, really good quick shifter. That's the bottom line. BMW's been doing quick shifters for many years now on their various models, and they've kind of figured it out, I think. Someone asked about splitting lanes on the K16, which of course is legal here in California. Not as easy on this bike as other bikes, as you might expect, because it's huge, but surprisingly good, I think. Now we can check out the brakes. The brakes are linked, front and rear, and they are absolutely stunning. Here we go. Let's get on it. As it spins up to 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 RPM, it makes an awesome kind of BMW M3 whale. It's a straight six after all, just like the real M3s are straight sixes if you ask me, but let's not get into that. Anyway, it makes a great sound and lots of power. What other features we got? So in this menu piece here, we can change the damping characteristics of the suspension from cruise to road. Road is a little bit stiffer. It's sort of like if you were taking on some twisties or something. Cruise is for, I don't know, cruising, I suppose. I usually leave it in cruise, which is a little squishier, but I think more comfortable. And then with this BMW wheel here, you can select rider with luggage, rider with passenger, to change the preload in shock. And of course the suspension in general is pretty weird on this motorcycle. You got their typical BMW paralever swing arm, single side swing arm, with a sort of anti-shaft jack situation on there, which in a bike like this I think works totally fine. I think when they've applied it to sport bikes and stuff, it's been a little bit shaky, but and then it's got that telelever front end, so that weird kind of A-arm wishbone-y thing that reaches between the fork and the between the fork and the chassis, which also controls dive, which means as I approach this stop light and I pull in the clutch and I stab the brakes, the front end doesn't dive, it just stops. It's pretty pleasing. And it's not dissimilar in that respect to the Goldwing front suspension, which is that slightly different sort of Hossack style double wishbone thing, which is also pretty nifty and does the same thing, which allows anti-dive characteristics to be tuned into the geometry of the front end, so that when you hit the front brakes, the bike doesn't dive. Pretty smart, I think. I suppose we can talk a little bit about the dash. We can't get into absolutely everything, but as you can see, there's a little color LCD down here, gear position indicator, GPS, which is an option. I think there's like a navigation package or something. I think it's like $800 or $1,000 for that situation. It integrates quite nicely, and it's a typical BMW system, which is a Garmin partnership thing, I believe, which means it works pretty well because Garmin knows what it's doing when it comes to GPS. I will say this about the dash, especially in comparison to the Gold Wing, it really doesn't hold a candle to the big LCD screen, big color screen and CarPlay and all that jazz that the Gold Wing has. This is pretty outdated at this point. And I mean, it's almost a decade old, so I suppose that's what you get. Meter light. That just means one more excuse to hoss on this engine, right? Away we go. Oh my god, it's just like so much more exhilarating and fun than it should be for what it is. It's really pretty incredible. Well, all right, now we're cruising along on the freeway here, not quite as fast as we'd like to be going. We're going 55, 60, something like that. But this obviously is what the Grand America is made to do. Go 60, 65 miles an hour, much more than that if you like. And the engine is dead smooth. There are no discernible vibrations. The air management is very good, in part because you can adjust the windscreen down and up, as I'm doing right now, and block all that pesky wind. One of my favorite things, not a big deal, but these little winglets that we saw in the driveway. You can open the little winglet, and on a hot day it dumps air into the cockpit, so you're not sort of suffocated behind all this bodywork. It actually dumps air in there, which is pretty nice. And if you want to do the right one, you can set cruise control, reach over and do that. I'm sure BMW does not recommend doing it whilst you're riding, but as you can see, it's not a major inconvenience. And yeah, now I got air hitting me in the stomach and in the chest, just sort of breathing on me, which is nice. Let's see, what are the features? Heated grips, heated seat, obviously. Radio, which I think is useless, but I suppose a nice feature if that's what you're into. Mirrors. Someone on Instagram asked about mirrors. Someone usually does, again, because you know I love it. The mirrors on this bike are very, very good, sort of as you would expect. One nifty thing I think they do is, you can see, I don't know if you can see, there's a little line. I'm going to try and point the camera over there even though I'm not looking there. There's a line on the edge of the mirror, and on the outside of that line, the mirror is especially convex, which means you can see, everything gets really distorted, but you can see farther over in that mirror than you would if it was just a flat piece of glass, which I think is, again, nifty feature. Not really a reason to buy a motorcycle or anything, but I think it's pretty cool. All right, exiting the highway now, which is like almost kind of sad, just because this bike is so gosh darn good at going down the highway. Sometimes people ask about this engine and how, you know, dynamic it is, or how much torque it has, or how smooth it is. So I'm just about down near idle right now. I'm at like 1100 RPM, and I'm still in 6th gear. I'm going 30 miles an hour in 6th gear, and I can come out onto this 2-lane road here and open the throttle, and away we go. And I'm going 75 and I didn't even shift. It's just staggering. It's a very sort of similar thing that the Goldwing can do, frankly, but it's really, when you think about how stable and balanced and well engineered an engine has to be to do something like that, to go 25 or 30 miles an hour in top gear and then just accelerate like that, it's, I don't know, you might even say it's worth $25,000 or $30,000. You might not, I don't know, whatever, that's up to you. My lovely colleague Ari Henning, some of you may know from his MC Garage show or on Two Wheels episodes. He doesn't really like the K16. He thinks it's too big he prefers the R1200 RT. And I don't think he can be blamed for that. That's a mighty fine motorcycle, the BMW RT. That's the opposed twin, 1200cc opposed twin, so that's like they have an R12 GS and R1200R. And honestly, similarly capable to a K1600. I mean, it'll cross the country. It holds lots of gas. You know, it has integrated GPS. It has heated grips. It has heated seats. You know, it'll do all the same stuff, really. But me, I'm a fan of the K16. I'm not sure I'd get the bagger version, the K16B Grand America, or the bagger version. I might just get a K1600 GT, which is more of a sport touring kind of bent. So that speaks to my interests. But the point is, I like the K1600 platform. I think it's special in its own way. I love the engine, as we've discussed. And the adaptive headlight is magic. It's just pure motorcycling magic, plain and simple. And I'm 6'2", so to me the K1600 doesn't feel too big. It is a big motorcycle, and I appreciate smaller motorcycles, but also it doesn't intimidate me at low speed. And yeah, I don't know, I guess that's how I feel about that. Lots of people on Instagram asking if you can back in a K1600, so I guess we'll try. I haven't done this yet, we'll see. It does not like that. As for wheelies, it does do wheelies if you shut off traction control, but I'm not going to do it this time around. Sorry everybody, sorry. You just have to take my word for it. It does wheelie, but it really kind of tortures the bike. And so I'm not going to do that. I'll try one more back in for you though. Let's see what we get out of this. Ugh, it's not like that. It's got ABS. It's got that, you know, really balanced chassis. Doesn't really want to back in, which I think is fair. She's a big girl after all. All right, so I said we talk about pricing, and I'm just going to take a spin around my parking lot while we talk about pricing, because it's going to take a minute, and I want to demonstrate low speed handling, which a few people asked about. Pricing starts for the K1600B around $20,000, I think, maybe a little bit under. But by the time you get the Grand America version with the top case and the whatnot, it's going to be quite a bit more. I think it's more like $24,000 for the base Grand America. And then if you get the dynamic headlight and you get the quick shifter and you get a center stand and sort of all the packages that they build out for you, this bike is right around $27,000, I believe, which is in the noise for a Goldwing. So yeah, there you have it. I think is pretty interesting, actually. So low speed handling on this bike is very good. It's good on the Goldwing too. The main difference with this bike and the Goldwing is this bike is just much lighter to the touch. It's whether low speed or high speed, but especially when you're moving down a twisty road or something, it's just much more agile. The rear tire has a much more aggressive profile, so it tips in quicker. It's not quite as stable, I would say, on the open road as a Goldwing. You can set the cruise control and it feels like you get off the bike and it would just run out of gas before it tipped over. But that is the difference between these two machines for sure. Okie dokie. We get to talk a little bit more about that engine too, which makes me happy, obviously. Hopefully you got your taste of it. It's a little hard to hear, I guess. But it's a mean mamma jamma. That is faux show. All right. We'll answer some questions. I answered some questions already, but we'll do it a little bit more. Yeah, someone asked about backing it in. A few people asked about that. Devin John 92 asked, as a sport bike man, would you say it's sporty given its size and weight? Yes, for sure. The foot pegs do drag eventually when you really sort of wick the pace up, but it's an amazingly good sport touring motorcycle. It is a touring motorcycle, let's remember. but the engine, the brakes, the chassis, they're all amazingly good. When will Ari Henning get his dreads back? Also mirrors. That was James Shaw Gleason who asked that question. I don't think the dreads are coming back. According to Ari, no dreads, and we covered the mirrors. They're good. How does it compare to the F6B? Mikey in SD. Well, Mikey in SD, the F6B, I believe, is still just the old Goldwing platform. So I would say this kind of blows out of the water. The new Goldwing is F6B-like, though, because it doesn't have a top case. Technically, the Goldwing Tour is the one with the top case, which compares to this one, but the K1600B would compare to the standard Goldwing. And they're comparable, is the bottom line. I'd probably get this one because I love the engine. The Dalton Wells asks, how does it compare to a Yamaha FGR 1300? Much different. Grand America is low-slung. You can see that sort of like low, swoopy tail section thing. More accurate comparison to the FJR 1300 would be the K1600 GT. And I think it is much better than an FJR and also a lot more expensive. So that's up to you, I guess. Sati asks if it's a comfortable place to be. You bet it is. Gold Cam asks if it'll wheelie. We covered that. Sorry I didn't wheelie it, but just have to take my word for it. I think that might be just about it. Is it better than a Goldwing? I feel like we sort of covered that. It's different. So on the topic of Goldwing, Ari and I are working on a comparison right now, so that story should be up on the internet somewhere, so you can read our words about this bike compared to the Goldwing and see some photos and some more specs. And thank you guys for watching. That's it. See you next time.